Hi, I'm Ron.
And I'm Don.
And this is the Ron and Don Show, coming to you today from Florida Stainless Fabricators. In the first episode, we explored the refurbishment of your existing stainless steel components. In the second episode, we talked about the replacement of your existing stainless steel components. And today, in the third of this three-part series, we're going to explore the actual installation steps for the replacement of your stainless steel.
The role of replacing stainless steel equipment, whether it's a chef's counter, which we're going to talk about today, or a side station, or any other custom-built unit, is very much going to follow the same pattern. We've already been through the design and the approval and the bidding process. Now let's talk about what do you have to get going for installation. You can choose, if you have time, to act as a general contractor and get all the subs, coordinate them, make sure they have all their materials and all that kind of stuff, or you can do your job as a facilities manager and hire a general contractor to take care of all these problems.
So the next logical step for a general contractor involved in this thing is to actually visit the fabricator, take the final set of approved drawings, and make darn sure that what is on the drawings is what's in front of you. There's nothing worse than being there at 11 o'clock at night, call it 1 o'clock in the morning by the time you get all the old equipment out, and finding out something was not fabricated properly. It's very important that all of that stuff be previewed ahead of time.
Once that's done, get on site, make sure you have an on-site meeting with all of operations managers, chefs, key employees if possible, as well as the general contractor, and if need be, the landlord, to make sure that you all have agreed on the time to start, what's going to be done, what is going to be done by operations to get ready, removing all the food from the area, making sure even refrigerators that are not being moved in the operations mind to do the job have all the food removed, because I don't know how many times a refrigerator got unplugged and the food in it was lost overnight. Have all of the small wares and service items moved to a completely different area of the restaurant, because the work is going to get dusty and dirty.
It's been our experience that removing old equipment to be replaced with something of the next generation, if you will, involves a change to the electrical circuits that are supplying capacity to that area. And if you think about a remote refrigeration system versus going to a self-contained refrigeration system, the electrical needs all of a sudden become greater at that cook line or chef's counter or wherever in the kitchen you're working. So once the new needs for electrical service are determined, the great thing about that is you can go ahead and pre-wire and run those circuits, have them above the ceiling and ready to drop down once that existing equipment is torn out. Then the circuits can be pulled down, and you're that much ahead of the evening when the time is so critical.
You'll normally have additional refrigeration or additional electrical needs anyway, so remote versus self-contained, it's a lot easier to have self-contained, because remote refrigeration, later on, if you have a problem, you have to find where it is in the lines. But self-contained, it's all right there, and your mechanical contractor can deal with it. It's also a lot easier for installation.
Predominantly on the back side of the cook line, you can expect that you'll have some gas line, gas manifold modifications that need to take place there as well, and of course the tie-ins that would need to go into the hood system and things like that. So all of that stuff, or a lot of that stuff, can be dealt with far in advance of the day you actually pull out the old equipment in a kind of a pre-wire, pre-plumbed, pre-action strategy.
Also, if you have walls that are deteriorated in the area around the chef station, get those fixed in advance. These are all night jobs, overnight jobs in advance that will make the process of the replacement go a lot faster.
We also find too that when we're doing chef counter replacements, that a lot of the times the hand sinks will be incorporated into the new design of the new components. That means you probably have a hand sink on the end of the cook line or somewhere in the cook line area that's going to therefore be eliminated. It's a good idea to go ahead and plan that you can eliminate that early on in the process too. Frankly, it may be in the way of pulling all that stainless out.
And also you have some on-site considerations. If you really have a tight area, you can have a chance to open up doorways in advance to get things through. The custom work that we're going to show pictures of the installation in just a few minutes is designed to go through small openings, small doorways, make tight corners, as opposed to some of the other other manufacturers who make chef's counters. Sometimes that is 48 to 50 inches wide by 36 inches high, and if you've got a 32-inch doorway, it won't go through. All of the stuff that we're talking about will go through a 32-inch doorway.
The general contractor cannot spend too much time planning in advance for the materials, equipment, and supplies that will be needed on that critical first and second night when all of that old is coming out and all of the new is going in. There's nothing worse than needing a bag of thin set or whatever the case may be at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Make sure before you even allow them to come to the site, that they have checked to make sure they have all of the equipment. None of it has been damaged in shipment by visual inspection, and that they are totally ready to get going and have a full crew. If half their crew is sick, cancel, reschedule.
And I'll add to that and say it's important that having not only that material on site, the equipment on site, but having that equipment staged in the proper order that it will then go back into the building. Nothing worse than scrambling around and trying to figure out which piece is next.
Okay, you're getting started that night. You're going to shut down the restaurant as early as possible. Get the people out of there. Don't have the janitorial service in there cleaning until after you're done, and get started. You're going to turn on the hoods because you're going to create some dust. You're going to have the fire alarms put on test because you're going to create dust, and you're going to have to put up dust control because you're going to create dust.
The important step I want to make sure is not missed. If all of that old equipment is coming out in a location where you do not have a nice wide open parking lot for that old equipment to sit until you can figure out how to dispose of it, it's critical to make sure you have a disposal. Let me say it again. It's critical to make sure you have a cartage and disposal plan in place so that you don't have a bunch of old equipment sitting out in front of a restaurant that may be in perhaps an urban environment where it's just not expected that can sit out there for very long.
Or a pile of demolition concrete and curb.
That too. Okay, so we're out with the old and in with the new. The first thing we want to talk about is disconnecting the quick disconnects for the gas, disconnecting the electrical, disconnecting any remote refrigeration line sets that may exist, and of course properly evacuating those, and cutting up and getting that equipment out of there.
And in the process, you're going to be making a lot of adjustments we talked about with the hoods, but more importantly, let's be working safe. You're going to take that up out in pieces out of the restaurant, get it out of the way completely so that you can stay, as noted earlier, all the equipment ready to come in. Your utilities, you're going to want to pull them in place. You're going to have to demo out the curb, and if you have one, and that is going to be one of your problems. The curb demo and getting the new floor installed may take you longer than you anticipated, so have extra people on that. That will slow up the setting of the equipment. Once the tile is down, you may not have time to grout it, and you may have to just cover it with ram board for the night, set the new equipment on it, and they can reach underneath it to grout it on a second night if necessary. There's a shortcut for you. Once you start setting equipment, the thing that slows everything up is the electrical. Though everything is pre-wired, you have to pull it through. You have to bring the power down through the wall into the side of the equipment, and generally it's a cable that big around. It doesn't bend easily, and they have to work to get those wires in and hooked up. That takes time. So the first cabinet set, the absolute first cabinet set, is the electrical disconnect cabinet. Then you start building the cabinetry afterwards, going down the line.
I just want to highlight something you said just a minute ago, Don, talking about curbs. You know, the philosophy 20, 25 years ago was let's put our equipment up on curbs because then you don't have to worry about what's going underneath the cabinet as a whole. Unfortunately, that didn't work out as well as I think it did on paper, and these days a lot of curbs are being torn out so that the equipment has full access underneath, and in a lot of cases that equipment can slide in and out. So that's why those curbs are generally being demolished. The second thing is that expect that when all that old equipment comes out, at least on the ends of, in what we're talking about a chef's counter, there's going to be wall deterioration, and there's going to be the need to address that as well. So have have the studs, have the pressure treated materials, the Durarock and the FRP and whatever else may be necessary to deal with those. The time to go looking for materials is not at 3 and 4 in the morning.
Once all the individual base elements are installed, you're going to then install the stainless steel top and bolt it down, and then you're ready to install the overshelf. All of that has electrical that will probably have to be pulled through. Again, it's all pre-wired in a coil, but it still has to be fished through to the disconnect box. Once that's done and you've got everything leveled, now you're off and running. During this whole process, you have this beautiful new stainless steel top, all pretty and ready to go. Don't let your people stand on it and scratch it all up. Let operations do all the scratching. Give them that shiny new penny rather than slightly tarnished.
So as you're buttoning up and doing the final spit shine on the new components, it's also important to make sure that you take care of operations and install any of the added items that they may need based on their type of service. It may be ticket rails, it may be spoon holders, silverware holders, things like that. Make sure you get those items back on, and also any POS stations, perhaps printers, things like that. All of that stuff needs to be connected before the job can even be considered complete.
At this point, we're going to show you a little thing we shot over with the chef's counter, which shows you how the top and the over pass-through shelves may be just slightly out of place. Take a look at this segment real quickly. We're at Florida Stainless Fabricators out in the shop, and I want to talk about the installation and the joints themselves. These joints, though they're very open right now because they haven't really screwed all the components together, they will be very tight when it's done. Occasionally you might want to tack weld, but you don't have to seam weld it because it'll be very tight. The only thing you have to do is up here, you sometimes have to adjust like this one right here to make it so it's level, so when you run a plate across it, sliding a plate, it doesn't go clack, 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 which is disturbing to the guests out in the dining room. But fundamentally, what you see here as open seams will be much tighter once you have the walls compressing it and you have all the units bolted together. Make sure you give a really good look to make sure that that cabinetry is the way you want to present it to operations. You put in the POS system and that it's all rewired, hopefully the way that you had planned. Have operations come in, run a bunch of dummy checks, fill it up with water, drain it, turn on all the refrigeration, show them where all the thermostats are, because sometimes they're a little bit hidden. Make sure everything's plugged in and everything works before the contractors leave the site.
If all of that sounds like a daunting task, it's because, frankly, it is. It's a lot of work, but if you have a plan and you stick to your plan, it goes off a whole lot smoother. I'm Ron.
And I'm Don.
This is the Ron and Don Show. Please subscribe.